Hey there, wrestling fans. It is I, C.M. Jew, the most glorious Jew that ever lived, and your wrestling rabbi. And on this episode, as I relax with my lovely Jessica, we take a look at the night that many will consider the night that WWE killed Hell in a Cell with The Fiend versus Seth Rollins. All that and more on episode 106 of CM Jew's Wrestling Reviews.
I have proved to everybody in the world that I am the best on this microphone, in that ring, even at commentary. Nobody can touch me.
Welcome back, and yes, it has been a while for me. A long couple of months trying to regain my wrestling fandom. And that is a story for another time. I promise, hopefully it'll come out this week, because it's a story I want to tell. I just want to tell it in a way that people will understand, and it's one of the ways to struggle to tell it. But needless to say, I almost lost a huge part of me in my wrestling fandom at the beginning of the summer. And it's taken me a while to just want to do anything review-wise as far as reviewing wrestling. And I finally said, hey, I'm going to come back with Hell in a Cell, and boy, what a pay-per-view did I decide to come back on. Oh, well, if one of the reasons was because people say that I sucked the WWE's dick, this review's going to be a doozy. But, yeah, we had Hell in a Cell this past night. You know, this is fresh reductions. Yes, I know you hated Hell in a Cell too, Bella. See, everybody hates Hell in a Cell. And there's just no way to get around it, at least the way it ended. And that's something, though, I hope to give to you is a honest, fresh, logical, conclusive look, and fair, for that matter, look, at the 2019 Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. Because take away the ending, and yes, I know endings are important. They certainly are. But to be fair to a pay-per-view, you sometimes have to not allow one single element cloud your thoughts on it. And you take that away, the entire rest of the pay-per-view was outstanding. But we'll get to all of that more in final thoughts on everything. So let's just get started right off the bat with the pre-show match, which was continuing the feud between Natalya and Lacey Evans. This would be the shortest match of the night at 9:25. I have my notes right here. I saw parts of this match. I was actually cooking dinner while watching this match. But I saw most of it. And, again, I actually like Lacey Evans. I think she's fully engaged in her character, which is great. And I think she does a lot of things well. She just hasn't had much experience outside of developmental talent. And I think that's sort of the thing that hurts Lacey Evans, is that a lot of her matches have been with developmental talent. So it's people on her level, and she hasn't had a lot of matches with people that are on, or I should say, veterans and people who can lead her and teach her stuff. So in a way, she's still learning. But every match I see her in, she's getting better and better and better. And so I enjoyed this match. One criticism, though, is, and Lacey Evans has done this constantly, I think Lacey Evans taps too much. Somebody I think needs to sit her down and says, look, when you get put in a submission, just a couple, like 10, 15 seconds, then tap out. Really sell the pain that you've been put in before you tap out. Because even though you could maybe push the idea that she knows she's trapped and she's just trying to prevent herself from being injured, but still you want a couple of seconds of being in the hold before you tap out. So I think somebody needs to teach her that. But outside of that, I mean, it depends on your enjoyment. That's everything about this, is that at the end of the day, whether I like a feud or not, I'm judging on energy of the match, the story they tell, and other intangibles that I think are important in telling a match. Regardless of my personal feelings on a feud or not. Because I think that can cloud judgment about whether a match is good or not. So it depends on your enjoyment, whether you'll enjoy this match, whether you like the feud or not. But I thought it was a very solid match, and really the only one of the pre-show. So we open up the night with Hell in a Cell. The good Hell in a Cell. That being Becky Lynch versus Sasha Banks. This match went 21 minutes and 50 seconds. It was, I think, the longest of the night. As I look, yep, the longest of the night. It deserved to be the longest of the night. This was a damn good Hell in a Cell match. Becky Lynch and Sasha Banks tore it up. I love absolutely everything they did. I love Becky just being an absolute badass and jumping Sasha, and just beating the hell out of her. Stealing the chain from being locked up that just prevented the match from starting properly, and using it to just wail into Sasha. I love the back and forth, the creativity between both of them. I love the chair that gets set up by Sasha that gets used like 10 minutes later, and props to Dio Madden for talking about that trap that Sasha laid 10 minutes earlier really paid off. So, yeah, you have that, and just great back and forth, and great chemistry, I thought, between Sasha and Becky. And they just really, really sold the story of these two women who absolutely hate each other and just want to really hurt each other. And I think they did a good job of making things not seem too choreographed, and make things feel organic. The whole building of that sort of chair set up in the corner where they had the three kendo sticks, and then the chair on top of it that then Sasha got placed on, and then Becky then did the running dropkick, which is a beautiful move, one of the moves of the night. Again, it felt organic. Sasha started, then Becky finished the building of it, and it didn't look too choreographed. And I think the one criticism a lot of people have is that the match ended it felt sudden. But I don't have a problem with it. I like it. It was a mistake made by Becky. She was showboating too much, throwing all the chairs in. And then when she went to go for something, she got caught and had the Beck exploder onto the chairs. And then Becky used that to her advantage to lock in the disarmor. Which, again, it's a sudden finish, and I understand why people may not like it on that level, but I thought it matched the organic style of the story they were telling. There is another criticism, and that is that with Becky winning, it sort of foreshadowed who would be winning, Bayley versus Charlotte, because I think everybody knew that you were either going to have Bayley and Sasha win, or you were going to have Becky and Charlotte win. And I don't have a problem with Charlotte winning the title, as I'll get to later, that match. But I think there were some people, again, it was just a split decision, and if you were on the side that you thought, and this is something we'll be talking throughout the night, fans expecting finishes to go a certain way and wanting that result or nothing else, for good or for bad, we'll be talking about that. And in this case, it was something to where I think there was a fair number of people who thought Becky should have lost the title and Charlotte shouldn't be champion. and it not going that way shaped their feelings on those matches. And there's unfortunately nothing you can do about that, but I thought the match was solid. I look forward to the storytelling forward of what the Sasha should do now. Which is something I think when people talk about, I think this is the proper finish, they don't think about things, well, what do you do moving forward? And it's going to be really interesting to see what they do moving forward. Our next match kept the momentum of the pay-per-view going. We smartly done tornado tag match. This was, I think, a last-minute change to where it went from a normal tag match to a tornado tag with no disqualifications. Daniel Bryan, Roman Reigns versus Eric Rowan and Luke Harper. This went 16 minutes, 45 seconds. This match just had energy. There was always action constantly happening, back and forth between the two teams. Eric Rowan and Luke Harper looked like absolute monsters. And just had complete control of the match. And they looked as dangerous as WWE has been trying to sell them as. And then, of course, the build-up to WWE, Roman Reigns and Daniel Bryan coming back and being able to defeat them. That great finishing sequence to where you had they're setting up for that powerbomb through the tables, and Daniel Bryan Hurricane Rana's Luke Harper off, and then Roman Reigns hits this running spear, running off two tables and hitting the spear on Rowan through a table. Was great. The selling throughout this entire match, I was very fearful for the health of Daniel Bryan and Roman Reigns, and for everybody for that matter. Everybody did such a great job selling the pain and injury throughout the match. It really made the match go a long way. The crowd was into it, which helped it as well. And just a really good, chaotic tornado tag match with full star power. It was absolutely great. Our next match was an impromptu match that was made on the between the Hell in a Cell and the tornado tag match, to where there was I can't remember there or if it was like towards the end of the pre-show, because there was a interview with Ali, to which Randy Orton interfered, and that led to them saying, let's have a match tonight. I really love this match. Randy Orton versus Ali. It went 12 minutes, 10 seconds. Really solid match, and a great sort of storytelling here of the veteran Randy Orton, who is smooth and at the top of his game, versus the upstart Ali, who does amazing things. And again, I just love the story that they're telling here. A lot of people may not like it because it didn't have much build, but again, I think the build was built in, pun intended, because, the whole Randy Orton took Ali out. That was the spot that Kofi Kingston took. That led to the Kofi Mania and Kofi winning the title. And they've been telling that story throughout the summer in the Randy Orton-Kofi Kingston feud, among other things. So there is an animosity there that's already built in that you can understand. And I don't think you need much more than that. So great match, great counter wrestling. And I think that's what really made this match work, is that both wrestlers are great at counters. And they can do amazing counters, to whether it be Randy Orton, who can hit that backbreaker, or those rope hung DDTs out of nowhere, along with the RKO itself. And then Ali, who can counter into tornado DDTs and other maneuvers. I know a lot of people were amazed at the counter of the RKO towards the end of the match, which was absolutely amazing. But I do remember that they did that counter earlier, but it still looks beautiful and sweet and gorgeous. And yeah, it's a great match. And I think Ali, even in defeat, looked incredibly strong here. He looked Randy Orton's equal. Randy Orton was just the better person on this night. He had one last counter that was able to put Ali away, as Ali went for a move one too many times. a slight mistake. Again, very realistic on a sports aspect. I love the storytelling, and I thought it was a great match, especially considering it wasn't advertised and impromptu. Which, unfortunately, that is something I think a lot of people have been criticizing, and is a fair criticism for this card, is that this match, along with the next couple of matches, were announced on the pre-show. And so they weren't... And I can understand that aspect of people not building and getting people excited for it. So I think it's a fair criticism of WWE. Maybe should have had these matches set up beforehand. But, it's also hard to argue, though, when they're this good. Speaking of this good, a match I think that surprised everybody and was one of the most surprisingly good matches of the night, because I don't think anybody expected anything of it. You had the Kabuki Warriors of Asuka and Kairi Sane challenging Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross for the WWE Women's Tag Team Championship. This match went 10 minutes, 25 seconds. And it was wonderful. It was great tag team wrestling. Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss work so well together, and I think that surprises a lot of people. You would think that their styles would clash, but they mesh very well. And then, of course, Asuka and Kairi Sane. And I think they had a really great showing here. And I think a lot of people don't understand what they can do. But again, here now, not only did you have their great maneuvers and just their great energy, but now there's some more character, heelish character. You have Kairi Sane thumbing the eyes, taking some heel tactics. And then, of course, the great surprise of the return of the Green Mist to win the match by Asuka. Which I don't think anybody was expecting. It was a great surprise. When they did that sequence to where Alexa Bliss does the cannonball on the Kairi Sane, and she's like, oh, I've taken care of that. I don't have to worry anymore. And the referee's distracted, and Nikki Cross turns to Asuka. You're expecting a kick or something. But instead, you get that green mist, and it was such a welcome surprise. I mean, for those of us who know the history of the mist, it's instantly thinking to the Great Muta, or to Jerry, for that matter. And just, it was wonderful to see. And it was just a great, solid tag team match. With great tag team, the Kabuki Warriors cutting off Alexa Bliss, building to the hot tag of Nikki Cross, and then building to that finish. It was a really good tag team match, which is far more than I think anybody expected. I can't say enough about that. That was a great match. Now we come to the first match in which the energy was starting to get lost in this pay-per-view. At this point, all of the matches had been keeping this very solid, steady energy throughout the pay-per-view. And here it kind of got lost. I mean, it's a six-man tag, the OC versus the Viking Raiders and their mystery partner, who turned out to be Braun Strowman. This is the only match that was under 10 minutes. It went 8 minutes and 15 seconds, which actually surprised me when I look at it, because it felt much longer. But I guess that's a credit to the non-stop action between these six wrestlers. But yeah, it was just absolutely... it lost some of the energy, because it was really a much more different style, especially when Strowman came in, and it became more about his feats of strength. But still, I thought it was a solid match. I thought they told a good story, all building, of course, to that hot tag, Braun Strowman, him running wild. And then, of course, they're building towards that whole Tyson Fury stuff that they're going to do with Strowman, to where, again, the OC gets disqualified, and then the stuff that happens after the match, which you kind of forget is what happened. But then AJ goes for that springboard for that phenomenal forearm to put Strowman, out, and Strowman just clocks him with a punch, and of course standing over there. But what really made it is, and I think nobody can deny this, because while this is lose a little energy, something that can't be denied is that AJ Styles put on a masterclass. Absolute masterclass on how to sell. Oh God, it was so beautiful. I'm getting tears. It really was. I mean, the whole spaghetti legs and stumbling out of the ring and like, where am I? And you can hear the guy like, you're in Sacramento. Somebody give them an Oscar. Because Gallows, Anderson, and Styles deserve one for that selling. Like, magnifico. It was just so beautiful. And those are little things that I think people forget that could be done so well and make what was an okay or good or solid match actually sort of have a great ending to it. So I love that about this match. Next match, a continuing feud. And so again, how you feel about the feud, your mileage will vary about whether you liked it. I've enjoyed the feud. So Chad Gable versus King Corbin. This match went 12 minutes and 40 seconds. And again, another solid, absolute outing between Corbin and Gable. These two have such great chemistry. The big and small dynamic works so well between them, and they work so well off each other and just build towards the finish. I love, again, this whole thing with, Chad Gable with the short jokes, the irony of, it was a schoolboy, excuse me. To quote Corey Graves, I would have used the small package. Yes, I went there. If WWE is going to go there, I'm going to go there. But it was a great match. I really enjoyed this feud. I really enjoy watching these two wrestle. I never get tired of them. They have such great energy and chemistry, and it works so well. And I love the ending again, telling the story of sort of lessons learned to where Corbin tries to use the scepter. He misses, and as it gets taken away, Gable rolls him up in a schoolboy to get the 1, 2, 3. And to which, by the way, another highlight of the night for me was Michael Cole apparently getting switched to SmackDown is going to make him a great commentator again, because somebody give Cole an award here to where the ring announcer goes, "Your winner, Shorty Gable," after, King Corbin had made the decree that Chad Gable will be now known as Shorty Gable. And Cole absolutely loses it. Like, he should be fired. It's Chad Gable. How dare Cole? I love that little segment from the announcers. That was great. And again, Cole really being on the side of Chad Gable and being Gable over for pulling off a great upset, and Corey Graves being a great heel. I love it. This unfortunately brings us to the final two matches tonight. And we're going to start, of course, obviously, the first one is the less egregious one. And again, this really depends on where you thought, I think, WWE should go with it. Charlotte Flair versus Bayley for the WWE Women's SmackDown Women's Championship. This went 10 minutes and 15 seconds. I really enjoyed the match. I think Bayley and Charlotte have great chemistry. I think they always have. And I thought they told a solid story. Obviously, Charlotte wins, gets her 10th reign, and there are a lot of people who thought, like, oh God, well, of course, they love their blonde white women to be champion. But I don't think that's what's happening here. Again, obviously, as I said before, with Becky winning, that's sort of foreshadowed that Charlotte would probably be winning here. But again, I love the ending sequence here. You had Bayley unintentionally cheating, not even realizing she's doing it, thinking she's still being a role model, and getting caught, and it costing her the match. And there's this whole thing to where as Charlotte's walking up, you hear Bayley go, why does this stuff keep happening to me? And that's very important, I think, for the story going forward, because I think the story going forward that they're going to be telling, that they certainly told in this match, and they've been telling in the lead up to this match, is Bayley's slow descent into madness. Like, she's heel, but she's not full-blown heel. She's in that sort of delusional state to where she's heel, but she thinks she's good. That whole, I'm still a role model, that part. This is something that could drive that full descent into madness fully over the edge and cause her to go full heel. And so, again, this slow burn storytelling I'm really enjoying. And I give WWE props for doing, because I think there are a lot of people that would just say, no, just peel that Band-Aid off, make her full heel. And so it takes some courage to do sort of slow burn heel storytelling. And this gets into something I'm going to be talking about in a second. The whole conflict between what the fans want and the story that WWE is trying to tell. In this case, the fans think it should just be rip the Band-Aid off. But WWE wants to tell a solid story. And so in the conflict of interest here. But I thought, again, you saw this story play out throughout the match, and that made it to be a very good match. The heel tactics, Bayley working on the leg, for that matter, which is something she doesn't usually do, but very smart of her to do. And also shows her progression as a wrestler. That she is now working on body parts. Even though she's not a sort of submission specialist or anything like that. But that's a very, a skilled wrestler would do that. So again, I thought the match was very solid. It wasn't as good as the other women's match in the night. Both the tag match and Becky and Sasha. But still, I thought it was a solid to really good match. I thought they told a good story to why Bayley lost and Charlotte was able to pick up her 10th reign. And the post-match stuff I thought was great as far as telling the story that they are going to tell moving forward. I thought it was an absolutely solid match. So if the pay-per-view had ended here, I might be giving this a 4.5 to possibly even 5 out of 5 stars as far as a pay-per-view, because I think every match has been, for the most part, great, with the worst one being solidly good, that being the 6-man tag. But unfortunately, we have the main event. And the main event is the only match anybody will be talking about this pay-per-view for. It's the only match anybody will remember this pay-per-view for. And don't get me wrong, WWE is at fault for that. And it's sad that all of these great matches are going to be overshadowed by this bullshit. Our final match was Seth Rollins versus The Fiend, Bray Wyatt, in Hell in a Cell for the WWE Universal Championship. Match went 17 minutes, 30 seconds, second longest match of the night, I believe. Let me just double check that. Yes, sir, that is correct. Let's just proceed through the match. Start off with the entrances. Great to see Seth Rollins have pyro. He goes into Hell in a Cell. Then comes Bray Wyatt. That entrance is absolutely amazing. I love it. They start the match, but they don't have normal lighting. They have red lighting. Like the Freddy Krueger dream sequence, where it had a different lighting tone. Which I thought was an amazing thing to do, considering Bray Wyatt, the Fiend, is a slasher monster. You can hear me call him a slasher monster a lot in the next couple minutes. So be prepared. The match proceeds to continue, and The Fiend just completely dominates Seth Rollins. Slams into the cage and just decimates him. Seth Rollins gets a kendo stick, hits him, does nothing, just completely no-sells it. Off, and just everything is amazing. But there becomes a point where Seth is able to get the Fiend down, and he's just hitting him with weapons. And it gets a 1 count. So he hits him with more weapons. Gets a 1 count. Hits him with a couple stomps. Well, 3 stomps will be enough. Gets a 1 count. Hits him with like 5 more stomps. Gets a 1 count. Hits him with chairs and a ladder. Gets a 1 count. Hits him with a toolbox. On top of the ladder, but hits him with a toolbox. Gets a 1 count. Seth Rollins then proceeds to get a sledgehammer. Seth Rollins picks it up like this. And looking at it, the referee is telling him, can't do that. I'm going to call the match if you do. And he's like, yeah, you're right. That is too far. In our WWE, we can't do that anymore. But then decides to do it. And mind you, while it's on the chair, so say but they try to sell it as a shot of straight up him bashing the Fiend's skull in straight up in the head with the sledgehammer. The referee calls for the bell. They bring mind you, the fans were already booing at this point because, mind you, their thought is, oh, Seth is going to retain. But every time the Fiend kicked out, they cheered until Seth Rollins got the upper hand and was continuing to do stuff. But if you thought those boos were loud, when the bell was called for, they got even louder. They bring out, medics and other referees to put the Fiend on a stretcher. Seth Rollins, at this point, is just besides himself. Like, what did I just do? Finally, as they're putting him on the board, he goes up to the Fiend and says, look what you made me do. Look what you made me do. To which Arn jumps up, grabs Seth Rollins in the mandible claw, instantly wake up like Jason Voorhees, chokes him out, throws him to the floor, chases all the medics and referees away, rips up. The fans are still booing at this point because they think it's bullshit, and I understand why. But the Fiend rips up the thing, Sister Abigail on the concrete, reapplies the mandible claw, causes Seth to bleed tremendously out of his mouth as the lights do the whole thing that they do when the Fiend has attacked somebody. And then it cuts to him looking back on the ramp before the show ends. As the crowd chants several things, including, we want a refund, AEW, and this is bullshit. And this was bullshit. But I also think WWE had absolutely no choice because they booked themselves into a corner. As hard as it may seem for people, I think I know what the story that they were trying to tell. And despite all the emotional line that WWE is bullshit and that WWE doesn't care for wrestling fans and all of that, I even got a reply to a tweet where I said, what happened tonight is what happens when you book yourself into a corner. Somebody said, have the Fiend win. But that doesn't make sense. Because the Fiend isn't concerned with titles. The Fiend is concerned with chaos because he's a slasher villain. He's in the mold of a Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger. Again, the whole mood lighting is very reminiscent of how when people get dragged into that dream realm that Freddy Krueger does, the lighting tone changes. That's the story that they were trying to tell tonight. They were trying to build the legend of the Fiend. Here is this great champion, Seth Rollins, who is doing absolutely everything he can to destroy the Fiend, and it does nothing. Literally, the Fiend was just toying with him the entire time. And that in itself should be evident that the Fiend didn't care about the title. And mind you, I'm talking about the story that they will hopefully be telling going forward about this. That's the story I think they were trying to tell. You include into that the referee's decision, which is taking away all past experiences of the Hell in a Cell. Taking away the fact that in the description they say, yes, it's no disqualification. If you were a referee and you saw somebody bash somebody in with a sledgehammer, would you not call for the bell yourself? There is some form of logic here to why the referee called for the bell. So you have that, and then you add that onto the story they were telling. The entire story of the match was Fiend is this slasher monster who is coming after Seth Rollins to destroy the legend of Seth Rollins. He wanted to do that by showing that he had complete control over Seth Rollins, which he showed at the beginning of the match. He also wanted to show it by showing that no matter what Seth Rollins did, it didn't faze him. To the point to where he just lied there and let him take his best shot at trying to destroy him. And it did nothing. He just rose up whenever he wanted to and then finished Seth off. To give Seth a false sense of security. And then take everything from him. Or at least what he perceives to be everything from him. As far as the match itself, again, it had the energy, but it had the energy at the beginning of the match of just the Fiend decimating Seth Rollins. But once the Fiend changed his game plan and just allowed Seth Rollins to just do whatever to him, the energy changed and the match started to drag. So that hurt the match in that way. But this is where we get to what I was talking about earlier. About WWE booking itself into a corner. As much as I just explained all that storytelling to you, the fans don't care about that. All the fans know is that they like The Fiend. And they wanted The Fiend to be champion. And they find Seth Rollins boring, a boring babyface. And they don't want him to be champion. And so for anything other than a decimation of Seth Rollins and The Fiend becoming champion would have been seen as bullshit. Even if they had some type of disqualification. Because, to be honest, I thought what was going to happen was that we would see the return of Finn Balor as the Demon and that sort of thing, to where he drags the Fiend down to hell. And that set up a Fiend versus the Demon match. I think a lot of people probably had that idea in their mind. Obviously, that didn't happen for obvious reasons, as Finn is now in NXT. And so that may have been the one that people may have been willing to buy, but with that taken away, anything else other than the Fiend winning, I don't think the fans would have accepted. And mind you, this was a corner that WWE booked itself into, not through the end of this match or anything, but the moment that they booked The Fiend versus Seth Rollins. Because there was no outcome other than The Fiend winning that people were going to be willing to accept. Or would have been seen to make sense. Because you can't have Seth Rollins straight up beat The Fiend. That would kill the character. Now, mind you, it's very obvious to me that WWE wanted to use this match to build the legend of The Fiend. But that's not what fans wanted. And this is the biggest problem that WWE has right now. And that is that WWE is chasing one too many masters. 3 to be exact. And those 3 are the fans, and what the fans want, which isn't always what's best for the story. The network, which wants what they want, which isn't always what the fans or what the story, or should I say, not always what the fans want, neither is it always what's needed for the story either. And then what they want, which is the story that WWE is trying to tell, which isn't always what the fans nor the network want. See, this is why I get frustrated with the whole Vince hates wrestling, or Vince hates wrestling fans, or Vince is trying to kill, Vince is giving us the middle finger. Because while Vince is the head of creative, there's an entire creative division that came up with this idea. And again, I don't think they were trying to bullshit people. I think they had good intentions in mind. It was just the wrong story at the wrong time to tell. And I would like to say they should have came up with a different ending, but really, they should have never booked this match in the first place. It should have been The Fiend versus Braun Strowman, possibly in Hell in a Cell. You know, it just... The moment they booked their match, they put themselves in a corner. Because, again, as I mentioned, the Fiend shouldn't be about the title. And as interesting as him being champion would be, and don't get me wrong, it will be interesting when he does become champion. Again, it's not the right time for him to be champion. I think anybody can look at that and look at that objectively and see that. But at the same time, you couldn't have Seth Rollins just beat the Fiend. And with Finn being in NXT, which, again, like I said, took away the only logical way sort of a no contest could have been happening, I think people would have accepted. And even that's questionable. They put themselves in an absolute corner. I think what they did is they tried to focus on, let's just tell the story and hope that the damage isn't as bad as it can be. Unfortunately, the damage is as bad as it can be. I understand why people are going to leave the WWE. I have some friends who say they're not coming back to Royal Rumble. So I completely understand it. For me, though, like I said, this match, it was okay, and the ending just didn't feel right. I don't think it's a bad match, but it's not a good match. It's just okay. It's too focused on trying to tell the story of the legend of the Fiend. And WWE, I think, loses the audience in that sense, because it's not what the audience wanted to an extreme bit. I mean, you put onto that it's the second straight year that a Hell in a Cell is ending by disqualification. People are just frustrated with that, and it's understandable. But what I would tell people is, like I said, I don't think this was some intentional swipe at the fans. I think WWE was trying to honestly tell the best story they could at the moment. And see, here's the thing. The last thing that left me sort of this... I was pissed off at the end, but the last thing that left me this pissed off was Brock Lesnar coming in at the end of Money in the Bank. And winning the Money in the Bank. And I was so angry at it. I didn't think there was any type of story they could tell. And then they told the story of Seth Rollins' redemption, in which he beat Brock Lesnar again for the title at SummerSlam. And I had to admit I was wrong. That's the thing. I'm not going to doubt WWE's ability to tell a story again that can make this possibly seem sane. Is the best word I can think of at this time. It's so hard because it's just an okay match with an ending that where the story makes sense. It falls flat because the audience just absolutely refused to accept it. And it's done heavy damage to WWE at a time where they don't need this. I mean, the unfortunate thing is that WWE, if you saw the other video I put out today, my defense of Kofi Kingston's loss to Brock Lesnar in 6 seconds. Now, the other stuff can really be told away. It's simple storytelling, and people are leading by their emotions, and they just need to calm down and look at stuff logically. But here, this just left too much of a bad taste in people's mouths. WWE is really going to have to work hard to get people back. The thing is, I will never doubt that they can. As much as I don't like this ending, I'm very interested in the story moving forward. We're going into final thoughts here. Favorite moves of the night? Asuka's missed. The counter to the RKO by Ali, and the running dropkick onto Sasha Banks as she's sitting on the chair in the corner. Those are the top 3 moves of the night. Top 3 matches were, and not to gloss over this, because there were some really good matches, but Ali, Orton, Sane, Kairi Sane, and Asuka versus Alexa and Nikki Cross at 3. The Tornado Tag, Reigns and Bryan versus Rowan and Harper at 2. And Becky Lynch versus Sasha Banks match of the night. This was such a great pay-per-view up until the main event. Every match I thought delivered. Every match had an understandable story that was telling, and a story that could tell moving forward. You saw everything laid out before you. Every match was great, with the 6-man tag being just solidly good. But the main event lacked no energy. It was so storytelling focused that it forgot to have a wrestling match. And they told a story that no one wanted at the time. Because, quite frankly, as I've said over and over, WWE booked itself into a corner the moment it booked this match. The moment it booked this match, there was nothing they could do that would have worked. And I know there are people saying, put the title on The Fiend, but again, that would have ruined The Fiend. It is a shame what happened to this pay-per-view. It is a shame that that ending happened. It's a shame that really what is a good story to tell with The Fiend is going to be so overshadowed because it was the wrong time to tell that story. While I will not put it past them that they could rescue The Fiend and that there will be some type of story that they're going to tell, this is going to leave a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth for a long, long time. It's going to take a lot of people a lot of time to recover from this. And they were in a corner, and it was just the wrong story at the wrong time to tell when people wanted something different. I give 2019 Hell in a Cell a 3 out of 5. That final match took it down 2 star points, but I can't give this pay-per-view anything lower than a 3. Because it was really that solid all the way up until the main event. I understand why the main event gave people a bad taste. But I also see no other choice that WWE had. And I could continue to participate on and go through circles and circles of this, but I've gone on ad nauseum. I'm not mad at WWE. I'm not upset. I'm disappointed in WWE. But my one bit of hope is that I do believe that this was not malicious. I think this was WWE at the time doing the best they can. And considering past experiences, I'm personally willing to want to see where this story goes. And so I'm going to continue watching. I'm interested in so many different stories at WWE. Being somebody to where I can't let one bad story affect my enjoyment of so many others that I am, I'm going to continue watching. But WWE is going to have to do a lot of work to get fans back. Mind you, I think the people who are going to suffer the most, unfortunately, is NXT, which right now is the best wrestling program on the planet, with the best wrestlers, period. But that, unfortunately, is what's going to happen. Because WWE pissed off a lot of people tonight. Understandably so. But I will never, and I mean never, say never, on WWE being able to tell a story to get out of this. So that's it for my review of the 2019 Hell in a Cell. Hopefully, you'll see I made some type of sense on a logical level. Hopefully, maybe in the coming weeks, people will have calmed down and can sort of see my point of view. I hope. Because while I know nobody is excited for Crown Jewel, I am excited for Survivor Series and TLC. So, until next time, my wrestling fans, I want you to remember that I am your reigning, defending, undisputed, unchained Jewish champion, CM Jew, and your wrestling rabbi. So just sit back and bask in my tranquility.